What's up? I'm Josh, and this is Worksharp. We're known for making knife sharpeners. Until recently, we started making knives. This is the RMX. It may look like a normal pocket knife, but it's not. It's built different. We're getting a lot of questions, so I'm here to give you the no BS rundown. What do we make and what's the story? Let's go. So what do I mean when I say it's built different? As knife people and fans of knives in general, we knew we didn't want just another knife, something with a steel liner and G10 scales, or as much as we love an axis lock or a button lock, like we weren't gonna take something off the shelf and just put our logo and our design on it. We engineered something different. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about a swappable pivot mechanism, something that goes from manual to automatic. We also have an integral handle. That's been done before, usually in titanium or aluminum, and they're milled. But we did cast magnesium, and we finish milled it so that it has a precision look and tolerances. Magnesium is a unique material. It's not used in any knives that I know of, but it is used in things like race car wheels or power tools, or even the clutch cover on my KTM. I'm gonna do a full teardown of this knife, show every component piece by piece and what makes the knife special. Hopefully that answers a lot of questions. Before we do that, let's take one step back and let's go talk to Dan, the lead engineer, and get a little bit more of the philosophy and how it was designed so we can see how that turned into each component that's used to make this knife special. This is Dan Doble, our lead engineer here at Worksharp. Dan approaches things unconventionally. He breaks the mold. With our sharpeners, that's been true, and it's no different with the RMX. Dan, I want you to share a little bit about how the RMX was designed different from the very beginning. Maybe how the normal knife design process would be for some other designer, some other company, and then what did you do that was so different?
So most knives are typically going to be designed around the look or the feel or the application it's built on. I'm a manufacturing engineer, so I design a knife. I start from how it's made, how it's serviced, and then really the user interface is what's the contact points for the customer. And so I first and foremost went straight to how are we going to build this thing and how do we get the most value to the customer in the construction, and both how it's made, in the materials that we use, and the processes we use to build a knife. So we can get basically the most value in a premium product without charging premium prices.
Yeah, so specifically in this case, that means the mechanism's assembled from the outside rather than from the inside. So how does that allow us to get a premium product? We would load the manufacturing cost, the cost of labor associated with that, or say a little more.
Well, if you look at a conventional folding knife, it's stacked or sandwiched. It's made out of a whole bunch of parts basically assembled from the inside out. So you start with the blade, bearings, liners, scales, and then a whole bunch of fasteners, right? And then probably barrel spacers and stuff holding it all together. That's a lot of parts. It's a lot of tolerances that stack up. So the no-brainer for me was, let's go look at integral. Like, let's make a one-piece handle, eliminate a whole bunch of parts and a whole bunch of tolerance stack up. Integrals are fun, but the problem with them is they're really hard to assemble typically because the bearings are on the inside of the knife and you can't take the knife apart to get to it. So the genesis for why we have the big pivots and the pivots from the outside is so that we can basically assemble everything from the outside, like you said. So we have an integral knife, but super easy to assemble, and the fun part is there's almost no tolerancing or no precision engineering or machining needed on the inside of the knife where we don't have access. Almost all of the critical components are on one side of the handle and in the two pivots that we have. And the alloys we wanted to use are, quite frankly, only available in casting alloys. So the specific alloy we're using is a die casting alloy, and so even though we do a lot of the machining after we cast it, we have to cast a block of it anyway to get the alloy, the properties of the alloy we want. We get a much stiffer, better corrosion resistance in the cast alloy than we do in a typical, like if it was bare magnesium, it would be a completely different knife. It would feel different. We wouldn't have the stiffness and the hardness that we get out of the die cast alloys.
Yeah.
This knife is serviced with a single screw, right? Really easy to maintain. And that's why our screws are off the shelf socket heads. There's, everything there is, you're going to be able to find a tool to work on this thing and service it very, very easily. But the benefit to us from a manufacturing standpoint is we can assemble a knife in probably 10% of the time that your average folding knife is assembled, because there's so many less parts and the tolerance stack up is nearly eliminated. And so we have a lot less scrap, we have a lot less tuning that has to happen when you assemble that handle.
That's interesting, yeah, designed very much function first, even though it's novel maybe as a concept or some of the design elements. It's not novel for the sake of novelty, it's novel because it was approached in a different way, designed to be used.
Part of why it's novel is we don't know what we're doing. So we intentionally started from scratch without a lot of, now I've been working with knife designers and manufacturers for 20 some years, so I have a good insight into how knives are made and how knives are designed, but I wanted to pursue this as a whole company to do this a different way. And so going into it with those knowledge gaps has forced us to basically do things differently because we don't know, the standard way to do everything.
Yeah. All right, for you nerds who want to know more, leave questions in the comments and we'll bring those back to Dan and make more videos. But for now, let's go take a look under the hood of this knife. In front of me, I have the 3 configurations of the RMX. It comes in a mid-sized and a compact. The mid-sized has a drop point and a reverse Tonto blade, and the compact comes in a drop point. Each of these comes in either a black or gray Cerakote finish. Let's look at each of the components that make up the RMX. First, you can see that a traditional button lock knife on bearings, fully disassembled, it's about 21 parts. The RMX, fully assembled, similar knife in general, is only 12 parts. We built this with the right to repair in mind. We think it's important for you to be able to service your knife in the field at home without having to send it in. Worksharp knives have a lifetime warranty, but if you can service this knife at home, all the better. Let's look at all the parts. So I mentioned the blade steel. On the drop point, it comes in M390, which is a really strong, high edge retention steel with high corrosion resistant. Excellent choice. The reverse Tonto comes in 3V. Super tough, and we thinned it down so it is ultra slicey. The compact drop point is also M390, again, edge retention and corrosion resistance. Next, that magnesium alloy integral handle. This thing is beautiful. It is feather light, and it really is the X factor when you think about this knife and when you hold it in your hand. This is where the whole knife comes together. Each of the components attached to that specifically and give this knife its unique feel and also allow it to be manufactured in a different way, something that's affordable while at the same time being premium. The locking mechanism, it's a button lock, but it's not quite like your traditional button locks. Most button locks are going to have an hourglass shape or a thinned out section in the middle. This helps it interface with the rest of the knife, but it also means that there is a thin point of failure. For the most part, they pass all sorts of lock tests and they hold up in high use, but it is a thin point of failure and in ultra heavy use cases may become an issue. Our button lock doesn't thin out like that. It remains this full thickness minus a couple of little chamfers in there to nest into the blade. It's ultra strong by comparison, and we haven't seen any sorts of failure in testing. Our button lock locks open and it locks closed. That's primarily because it can be converted to an automatic. If it was just a detent, that automatic knife would open in your pocket. We all know that's no good. But it still has some of the same very satisfying features of a normal button lock. It's satisfying to open and close. It's ambidextrous. You can operate it with your finger if you're a lefty or your thumb if you're right-handed. Satisfying both ways and very intuitive. After the past couple of years of carrying this knife in different forms, I thought I would settle into liking it either in auto or manual, but what's true is that I end up switching that pivot back and forth from time to time just to get a new experience. And I think as knife guys, you'll resonate with that also. The auto mechanism is included in the box, and so is the tool to change it. It's oil impregnated bronze, and it houses the spring. It can be indexed for a slower or faster deployment, and if you like the snap, then just skip to the fast. The clip may seem like an overlooked part, but for me and for so many of us, the clip actually is really important. It's the thing that you interface with. It's what holds it in your pocket. And so Dan will probably tell you that he's messed with this clip and he iterated on this more than he iterated on many of the other components of the knife. It seems simple, it's not. This clip is ambidextrous. It can be flipped to either right hand or left hand carry, and if you remove it altogether, it exposes a hole, perfect for attaching a lanyard. Lastly, the weight of this knife is really what sets it apart. All these components come together for a knife that weighs 2.8 ounces. For a full metal construction knife, and especially for an integral, it has to be the lightest knife out there. Somebody fact check us on that, but I don't know of another integral knife that's gonna be lighter than 2.8 ounces. And again, that's because most are made from titanium or aluminum, not magnesium. When you hold the knife in your hand, there's an X factor. It's impossible to ignore. When you're using this knife for yourself or handing it to a buddy, it doesn't get old. All right, while we're back here, let's grab Alex and learn a little bit more about how these are sharpened and assembled. This is Alex Spears, operations manager here, both for the sharpener side and on the knife side now. Alex, tell us a little bit about what is so different about manufacturing at scale on the sharpener side versus what we're building here with knives.
Yeah, so it's a lot slower here and a lot more meticulous. We have a bunch more quality checks in place in the manufacturing process that slows things down in a good way. Out in sharpener world, the yield is so high and we're running so quick that we don't have the time in which to do these checks at intervals. We try to do that at the end of builds and in the beginning of builds to push quality upstream.
Give me some examples of like what do you check for and at what stages so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves?
Yeah, so each component of a knife is also so expensive. So having the quality checks in process, so like when we have a knife sharpened, before it gets anywhere to a laser or to any CNCing at post machining, we have to have a quality check there. So those get checked before anybody's allowed to touch them, signed off before they move to the next step. And it happens for every single component of a knife we're building.
So if we have a bad part, we kick out the part rather than building it up into a fully assembled knife and having to either kick out the knife or disassemble the knife for parts.
Yeah.
I heard one of the guys, I think Carl back here the other day, he said, he's been with us for a long time, he's built a lot of sharpeners, and he said, that's full-on production, and then what I'm doing back here is jewelry. So I want to learn a little bit more about sharpening, and let's walk in here and take a look at it.
Sweet. How much herbs and spices do we want to build?
So what is different about how we are sharpening than, I would say, conventional knife manufacturing? And like, it's not like we need to pick on any one or how we're going about this, but what are we doing and how are we making sure that, like, we're work sharp. If we make a knife, it better be damn sharp.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's another way around that. And so how do we get there?
It took us a ton of different tries to figure this out. We tried to really take as many variables out as possible from sharpening, and we realized that if you take too many of them out, knives aren't perfect. So we ended up having to train people to be good and then minimize only like one or two variables. So we actually took a bunch of technology that's kind of BGA style technology.
Yeah, in our sharpeners.
Yep. So taking a flat platen and angling that to the angle we're choosing. And then instead of a free hand that could move angles and change, we have a fixed angle.
Yep.
So, and it probably takes a month or two for a worker to get from starting to practice to sharpen and be able to create the stuff that we're looking for. So this is a little pneumatic gripper with a foot pedal.
Yep. Okay.
So you still have all of this axis, but now there's none of this anymore.
Yep.
And there's none of this way.
So the angle is perfectly consistent from the very heel of that blade all the way through the tip. Same angle, and the same angle every single time here. So we say we're sharpening at 20 degrees, every knife is 20 degrees.
Yeah, we have protocols built in for this, so every changeover has an engineer come in here and set this tool to a specific angle, check it, sharpen one all the way through. And then as you're doing next steps, our tolerance is so tight that once we go to our stropping station, if this is off a degree or two,
oh yeah,
you don't have sharp knives.
Yeah, you'll see a polish at the top of the bevel or polish only at the edge, or got it. So everything's calibrated and you swap that every time.
Yeah, and we are aiming for a polished bevel. So instead of just sharpening to an angle and then knocking a burr off, we have a third step that is going for polish.
Yeah, this is straight up leather, right? So power stropping at the end of this so that the knives that we're carrying are, like reflective.
And it's actually our middle step, middle belt that we're using of one of our, same thing that used to come on some of our sharpeners. It takes it from the harsh, coarse burr that you would make initially on like a 120 grit belt.
Yep.
And it's taking that to a light polish before it gets here. So we could get a kind of polish on the leather, but you wouldn't
have to have that in between to actually create that full refinement.
Yeah, so after sharpening, the big next step is assembly, and we got some guys right now assembling some drop points. So you can see Carl's working under a light and checking parts before and hand tuning them. And all the way at the end, we have Adolfo finishing brand new knives, getting ready for you guys.
We're so excited to get these knives in your hands. As knife people, this is like the project we've been working on for such a long time. And we gave it great specs, we covered all of that, but it's you guys who are gonna bring this knife to life. It's your knife, it's your story. We can't wait to see what you do with it. Thanks for watching this. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, subscribe, follow along, whatever. We're just getting started and we can't wait to build more knives for you.